It's almost the end of February, and it's time to answer that question, where the heck have we been? We're going to tell you about that and a lot more on today's episode of the Geek Watch Podcast.
This is the Geek Watch Podcast with Brian Hatcher and Mandy Petrie.
Greetings, Geek Watchers, and welcome to episode 181 of the Geek Watch Podcast. I'm Brian Hatcher, and with me, as always, Geek Watch's own resident geek goddess, Mandy Petrie.
Hi, Brian.
So we just managed to squeak in February.
Yeah, it was a short month and just very few podcasts.
Yeah, so there was one thing or another coming up. I had a doctor's appointment that I couldn't reschedule, so we had to call off the one, and then you got under the...
Yep.
Was a little under the weather, and then a flood happened.
Then everyone was under the weather.
Yeah, completely under the weather. And there was just one thing or the other, but we weren't going to let February go by without at least one podcast.
Hopefully. You didn't have a road in front of your house, right? You just had a creek?
Yeah, a couple of creeks, actually.
A couple of creeks, just...
But the studio survived. We got 2 of each geek and put them on the ark, and we waited 40 days and 40 nights, which was really tough because February only has 28.
Right.
We had to double up a lot of bunk beds.
Yes.
But we got here and some weird things happened that we can talk about, a few things that happened while we were gone. And specifically, I want to start out with James Gunn because he had promised us that he was going to say something by the end of January, and he waited to the last minute. He was like a kid doing his homework. He was like, oh my God, it's due today.
Procrastinate.
He posted something, I think it was on his Instagram, about some of the things that were coming out, their 10-year plan, and there was some things in there that I expected. We expected to see something from Superman, and we got that. We expected to see something from Batman, and I wasn't expecting necessarily what we got, because they're wanting to do Brave and the Bold, and so we're talking about a young Batman, but with his son as Robin, Damian Wayne. And so that's an interesting way to dip into Batman, especially if you're doing a reboot. Mm-hmm. What's weird about that is that they're saying we're going to do a young Superman, but the Damian Wayne, that's an older Batman. So
because Damian Wayne and Superman's son are best friends, and I love those two together. They're so fun. They're like Holmes and Watson, but little kids.
Right.
I love them so much. They're little shits. They're great.
There you go. Exactly. And we are kind of getting Wonder Woman, although it's going to be, they're calling it Paradise Lost. It's about Paradise Island before Wonder Woman. So it's some prehistory. So you're not actually going to get to see Wonder Woman. And then there's like a bunch of like really strange projects. They're talking about doing an Authority movie, which that was back from Wildstorm days before DC bought them. There was like a Jim Lee creation. And what's weird is it's more of an adult comic. I'm not sure. Are they going to do the Authority as an R-rated?
Like they tried with Watchmen.
Yeah, I'm wondering.
If they kind of looking at it, does it need to be a series rather than a film? You have a wider appeal if you could make it a PG-13 movie. Right. Is it lucrative for them?
The thing about it, it's going to fall into a lot of the issues like PG-13 horror. There obviously just some things you're not going to be able to do in a PG-13, and Authority just feels, it's not like, it would be like doing a PG-13 The Boys.
Would Authority be better like beside a Peacemaker?
Yeah, maybe.
Okay.
They're definitely wanting to do it as a movie and not as a TV series. And especially with all the weird things going on in Warner Brothers right now, they seem to be bleeding things off of HBO Max.
Right.
But they're not the only ones. And that's something else that we can start talking about is Disney had their financial call. And there was a lot of information that came out of there because, of course, Bob Iger is back at the reins. He was, of course, brought in because there were a lot of changes that needed to be made. Some of the things that I noticed, first of all, the big obvious thing is they're leaning away from Disney Plus as well. Because we were going to be getting a bunch of new Disney Plus Marvel shows. Now we're only getting 2 this year.
Oh.
They've backed them all off. So we're still getting Loki. We're still getting Secret Invasion, that's right. And that's it for Disney Plus.
And one of them it's established. So we're getting just a season 2 rather than something new, something that we were...
Right. Now, they're still planning on doing everything else. They're just spreading it out.
Okay.
And it looks like they're doing the same things with the movies a little bit. They've changed the Marvels. They've swapped it out with Disney's Haunted Mansion. So Haunted Mansion is going to come out in the summer, and the Marvels is going to come out closer to the fall. And that makes sense to me because, and we've talked about it before, but it just feels like Marvel, they were just front-loading a bunch of stuff. And we were getting a lot of quality losses because of that, I feel, because you're spreading your people thin, basically. If you got a couple of shows, a couple of movies every year, then you can concentrate on those. But if you've got a bunch of pots cooking all at once, then you wind up spreading yourself thin. And that may have been part of the problems that Disney felt Chapek had done, because he just felt, let's just keep priming the pump.
And then they don't really think about what they could do, staggering their releases. I know Miss Marvel and Obi-Wan right up against each other in the same week.
Right.
So if you're going to devote your time to one show and not another, that thins out your audience again.
Right. But, of course, that's one of the things that they were looking at. They were having all this content coming out, and now they're trying to step back from it and make it more special, but also give projects more time. I think that's a good idea. I'm getting old now. I'm getting to the place now where cinematic universe causes a chill to run down my spine, because I just want to watch a movie. I'm getting to the place now where I don't want to feel like I'm going to be investing.
I don't need an obligation. I want to be entertained, not receive an obligation.
Yeah, I'm feeling that more and more. And as a matter of fact, in Doctor Who, that we've been getting more news about Doctor Who. We've been getting more pictures from the set, more costuming stuff. And we're hearing this idea with Davies about doing a Doctor Who cinematic universe. He's already starting to talk about this. Now, he has done spinoff from
Torchwood, Sarah Jane.
Exactly. And he wants to do more of them. Class was a spinoff that didn't do quite as well. That was later on.
I don't even remember what Class was.
That was during the Peter Capaldi days. Coal Hill School. So it had that, takes place in Coal Hill School, which, of course, is the school that Susan, the doctor's granddaughter, went to, in the very
beginning.
The very beginning.
The unearthly child.
Yeah. But the show was okay, but it didn't do as well as they wanted it to do. But I don't know how I feel about a Doctor Who cinematic universe. I'm like, I love Doctor Who. I don't know if I'm ready to make another investment like that. But it's because we're going into the same thing with The Walking Dead. They've split up. Now, one thing I did hear about The Walking Dead, the Daryl Dixon show, where he's in Paris, apparently they're bringing in fast zombies. I don't know how I feel about that. Because
it's a little World War Z, not quite Walking Dead.
Yeah, that's part of it. And also, the show comes from George Romero's zombies and that type of a zombie. And as George Romero has famously been known to say on more than one occasion, in fact, said it so much that it wound up on a T-shirt that he sold, fast zombies suck.
That's not what's scary about zombies. What's scary about zombies is their numbers, not their speed.
Now, at my age, I'm not so emotionally invested in fast zombies or slow zombies that it's going to bother me that much. But it does feel weird that a show that based a lot of its stuff and has so much that it owes to the George Romero side of things, that they would go to fast zombies, which is absolutely antithetical to everything that George Romero ever did with zombies. But maybe that's just the route that they're going, and you could tell toward the end of The Walking Dead they were making changes to zombies because you had the climbers. And we've already started to see some pictures on the set for the Michonne Rick show that's going to be coming out. So they've already started filming.
I haven't seen those. Awesome.
Yeah, so that's already started filming. So, but yeah, it's just this idea of all these cinematic universes. I'm like, can you just do a show? But people just don't do that anymore. It's like everything has to come in a huge package. But I'm trying to get caught up. I really am. I am trying to get caught up. But there is The Last of Us, and you've been watching that. So what do you think of that so far?
Oh, it's so good. It is hard to describe without spoilers. They twist these tropes and these stereotypes. And have you watched it at all? Or,
no, not yet.
Yeah, I don't want to encourage you to get invested because I know how you feel about watching a show before it's in its entirety. But what are these, like mushroom zombies? So we have different types, and in the way people are surviving, they address things that have not been addressed in other post-apocalyptic shows. How do you deal with this? How does this work? Why don't they do this? And they've brought that in, and within 1 hour you have a full story arc that is absolutely heartbreaking. Several of those have happened watching this show and you get so attached to these characters, and spoiler alert, but you get so attached to these characters and then they are just gone.
Right.
Yes, and your heart absolutely breaks. You don't spend 2 seasons loving this person and then all of a sudden all you need is that 45 minutes and you already love them and you want the best for them, and it's over.
And they don't get it.
They don't get it, and it's really good, and I can't recommend it enough. And the makeup and the special effects, the practical effects.
Yeah, I've been hearing a lot about
yeah.
about how they're using a lot of practical effects.
Yes.
Which is very helpful, and something we're going to talk about here in a little bit, about another thing that I saw. But one of the things that I've been hearing about the show is that there is a lot of practical effects, and that in a lot of cases, you look at stuff and you're like, that's got to be CG. And no, it isn't.
Mm-mm.
They actually did a practical effect.
Yep,
and
they've got dancers, they've got contortionists, they've got gymnasts, real people under all these prosthetics and pasted to walls and coming out of the ground. And it is really beautiful. And you have something completely different every single episode.
Right.
And tons of them. Tons of them. It's really fantastic, and I can't recommend it enough. But you are going to get your heart wrenched over and over again. But it's really good.
Oh, yeah. Well, I have heard about one episode, and I only know a little bit about it. But apparently, this is the show that the one thing you never thought would ever happen is that Ron Swanson would make you cry.
Oh, my goodness. And that is one that is really, like, when it comes to horror tropes and stereotypes, it really turned it on its ear for that. And when we do have a spoiler episode, I would like to talk about that in the history of cinema and the Hays Code and what these characters go through, and looking at the history of it and knowing what this means.
Yeah.
And it's fantastic. You could write novels and pages and dissertations about this. It's really good.
I'm excited to see it. Again, it's trying to figure out what I'm going to tackle next, because I have fallen behind a little bit on Vox Machina, although it's been really good. I've enjoyed watching a lot of that. But of course, I'm going to have to talk about Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania.
Oh, yes, that did come out, didn't it? Okay.
Fake fan. No, I'm just kidding.
Seriously.
Well, I know, like, I don't jump into a season until it's pretty much over so that I know that it's going to come to an end. You usually wait in movies.
Yeah, I don't want to go to a theater. Ugh, gross.
Now,
so did it meet your expectations?
I didn't really go in with a bunch of expectations because, again, we've been talking about the Marvel March of Misery, and there were a lot of rumors that some nasty stuff was going to happen in this movie. I will say, again, I don't want to go into any spoilers. I'm going to talk about some things generally about the movie, because there's been a lot of mixed reactions to this movie. But I will say, starting out, that this movie was shot for IMAX 3D, and I'm not saying that I saw it that way, because, of course, that'd be a 6-hour drive, and why would I drive 6 hours just to watch a movie in IMAX 3D? Why would I ever do that? Why? Because it looked awesome.
In a moon age daydream, oh yeah.
Yeah, well, I was going to have to see that in IMAX. After saying that, I do see why some people may have had some problems with this movie.
Okay.
The big thing is, because this takes place in the quantum realm, 9/10 of this movie takes place on a green screen soundstage.
Okay.
And that's never a good thing, because it's very difficult to act when all you can see is soundstage green screen.
Right.
There were moments in the movie where some really weird stuff happened, and I would have thought that Scott Lang would have reacted in a crazy way about seeing this, but he didn't, because he didn't see it.
Because Paul Rudd didn't see it.
Because Paul Rudd didn't see it, exactly. And I've always said that if any actor, even if it's an extra, if they're on a green screen soundstage and they're able to behave in a way that is indicative of where they're supposed to be in the plot of the movie, they're standing out in this huge field, and this actor, even if it's an extra, is able to stand out there and it feels like they're out in the field, they're not standing in a claustrophobic soundstage, they should automatically get an Oscar. You just give them an Oscar, because it's almost impossible, especially because you might be able to see a drawing of something, but you don't know
The
really
tennis ball.
Yeah, you're acting to a tennis ball.
Yes.
And this movie that was supposed to be this grand scale feels claustrophobic.
Okay.
Because they're not out in all these worlds. They're standing on a soundstage that's all green, acting to tennis balls. And a lot of the scenery was gorgeous and beautiful, but the actors have no attachment to any of this stuff, and even the weird creatures that you see, because they don't see that. They see the tennis ball on a stick. That's what they see.
So we didn't have the butterfly moment from Peacemaker.
We kind of did.
But not as good as...
Yeah, not as good. But then again, with a lot of the CG stuff there, they're actually on a set. They're not, you're only having to act to a small little CG, one little CG thing. But 9/10 of the movie happened in a computer.
Okay.
And so it's very difficult to act that. And that's the reason why it doesn't feel very much like an Ant-Man movie. Because
like Tron?
Yeah, there's definitely some Tron in there.
Okay.
For sure. And I will say that there was one character in the movie, that I knew that was introduced, that I was disappointed in because I felt like it was it was a good idea. It just didn't really deliver because it fell into that Marvel trap of let's make jokes.
Oh, uh-huh.
And this wasn't a character that should have been funny or quirky. And although, and again, I don't want to go into any spoilers, but it was a character that they have in the past not in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but elsewhere, that they made it kind of jokey. But they shouldn't have made it jokey here. I think it would have worked out better. But I will say that Kang the Conqueror is amazing.
Excellent. Good.
They cast that very well. I cannot wait to see what they do with that character.
Okay.
And they've hinted to a lot of other things.
Mm-hmm.
The post-credit scenes hint to some things that we got coming down the road.
Okay.
So that's going to be interesting.
So
but
do you think that we're going to get him in Loki too?
Unquestionably.
Okay.
And I'm not going to say why.
Okay.
But yeah.
All right.
You see him in Loki. You see the statue of Kang.
Right.
At the end of Loki. So, I mean, it's not much of a spoiler. Yeah, Kang is going to be involved in the second season of Loki.
Okay.
But yeah, they tip you off, we'll say that.
Okay. So tell me this. Do you feel like Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania was a bit filler and setup?
Yeah.
Okay.
I do.
Okay.
It didn't really feel like the Ant-Man movies I've seen in the past.
Mm-hmm.
There was some good stuff in there. I hate to say there's some plot holes. There were some things that they introduced about the quantum realm that they just ignored because it would have been inconvenient, specifically with the time differentials between being in the quantum realm and all that.
5 hours equals 5 years if you don't do it.
Exactly. And so they just said that's going to be a pain in the neck for us to deal with, so we're not going to deal with it. So they just ignored that part of it. But I would say it wasn't a meh movie for me. It wasn't like, it's okay. I enjoyed it. It was it was definitely suffered from the Chapek, hey, let's get as much stuff out there as we can. And I think quite frankly, if they hadn't split up focus from that to Guardians of the Galaxy 3, to She-Hulk, to Werewolf by Night, there's like a ton of stuff that came out.
Okay.
And a lot of it was good. I've said in the past that I really enjoyed She-Hulk until they came to the ending, and then I didn't particularly like the ending, but I enjoyed most of that. But for a long time, we haven't had one of those glorious Marvel moments where it was just like breathtaking, where you came out of the theater and you were just like, oh my God, I can't believe I saw what I saw.
Yeah.
They haven't done that for a while, and I think it's because basically they've diluted the product.
Okay.
But we got Bob Iger back, and he's talking about making Disney Plus profitable. Because in his call, he talked about the fact that it had lost $1 billion, which made the stock go up. Because
buy low, sell high?
No, because of the fact that it didn't lose as much as they thought. They thought it was going to lose $1.25 billion, and it only lost $1 billion. So like, oh my God, this is amazing.
I can't even fathom numbers like that. It's just astronomical to me.
You would think if they lost $1 billion, why are they not just closing Disney Plus? And why would the stock go up? Even though it's not as much of a loss. I mean, where are they going to make that $1 billion from? That's the theme parks, of course.
Yeah.
Because the theme parks made $38 billion over the course of a year. So, of course, they're like, oh, they can lose $1 billion there. But Iger's wanting to bring Disney Plus to a profit. But the way he's going to do that is he's going to stretch a bunch of stuff out. He came out and said that the biggest problem that Disney has had in Disney Plus and in the movies is they've been front-loading a lot of content, like tons and tons of content. And they're going to be better off, to his estimation, and I have to agree with him, is to cut back on it, spend more time on each project and make it absolutely the best that it can be.
Right.
And let it be special. I remember back in the old days when you got 2 Marvel movies a year and you were thankful for them. And I don't know if I want to necessarily go to the drought we used to have, but at the same time, I do want the shows to be special. I want to wait a few months for them. If you got 2 TV shows, 2 series, and you got 2 Marvel movies a year, even them out through the course of the year, you get something new every 3 months. It gives you something to look forward to.
Right.
And I really
Seasonal.
Yeah, exactly. You have something to look forward to. We've gotten a lot of content. We've got a lot of movies and TV shows, and a lot of it was good. But going to sit down to have Thanksgiving dinner is great. But at the end, you just feel bloated and miserable.
Yep.
And I think that's where we are right now. And I think backing up and concentrating more on their projects and spacing them out a little bit, I think it's a good policy. I think it's going to reap dividends, and I think that's the route to go. Although, again, that means that we're not going to get as much, but I think it's going to be better. But I'm really looking forward to see the Marvels, because we got the new poster, which I love the poster. I'm really curious to see what happens there, but it'll be interesting to see what Marvel has for us this year.
We shall see.
And with that said, we come to the end of episode 181. Thank you for listening, and tune in next time for the latest in geek news and views with the Geek Watch podcast. For Mandy Petrie, this is Brian Hatcher, reminding all the Geek Watchers out there, we're all geeky about something. Be proud of yours. See you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Geek Watch podcast. If you enjoyed this program, don't forget to like and subscribe on your preferred platform and share this podcast on your social media. For links to all the ways you can listen to the Geek Watch podcast, as well as leave comments and suggestions, visit our website at geekwatch.net. The Geek Watch podcast is a Hanging J production.